was a little loud. Thank you guys for coming out. For everyone coming out today. Today we're going to be talking about how to use data to increase Web3 adoption. My name is James. I am the host for today. I am from Flipside Crypto. I am the head of data analytics. I've been working in the data space for a little bit over 16 years, in the crypto space for a little over 2 years. What we do at Flipside Crypto is we get data and we make it publicly accessible and easy to use for builders, enterprises, analysts. We have a free app called Flipside Studio, which you can query up to 20 different blockchains using SQL and build dashboards or any kind of analytics with it as well. We also have an API if you want to do things programmatically. We also work with enterprises. We do this thing called data shares, where you can access your data in a Snowflake instance and things like that. So nice to meet everyone, and thanks for coming. And I'll let Luciana introduce herself.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all. I'm Luciana Resnick. I'm the CEO at Sedalio. And Sedalio is a database that is auditable and traceable by default. Basically, it's a database that leaves a historical trace of every modification or transaction or everything that happened on the database on the blockchain. So that way, at any time you need to verify some data or you want to make sure that data has not been tampered with or whatever auditability feature you need, you can do that. I'm a second-time entrepreneur. I built this company. We started a year ago. So just getting started with this new one, and super excited to be here and about everything that is coming in the intersection between blockchain and data. So thank you.
Thanks, Luciana. Appreciate it. And then we'll let Scott introduce himself.
Hey guys, I'm Scott. I'm co-founder and CTO of ZetaBlock. So ZetaBlock is a unified data platform for Web3. Think about it, we basically provide like an Uber or Facebook kind of data platform for you. So not only you can access the data, use data warehouse, but you can also build your application, materialize view, and stream the data to your place. And then we started ZetaBlock a year and a half ago. We got 2 rounds of funding. We actually just closed a round of funding 2 months ago and triple size the team. Our team has a strong talent, like a engineer with 25-year experience, with 10 years at Google, the next generation Kafka tech lead, etc. So we have a very strong talent. We're trying to revolutionize the data infra space in Web3. A little bit about myself. This is actually my second company. First company building a streaming DB. I also got 40 million investment. And before that, I was the Uber engineering committee chair, so supervise all the major engineering design at Uber. And I also work at Salesforce for 4 years. That's about ZetaBlock and me. Thanks for inviting, James.
No worries. Thanks, Scott. All right. So we're going to talk about the topic of how to use data to increase Web3 adoption. One topic that I want to talk about is what are some things that you have done that got you into Web3 that's not related to investment? I'll start first. So like one thing that I really got me into Web3 was gaming. So I'm a video game player. At heart, I've been playing video games all my life. There was this whole play to earn. I don't know if you guys heard of Axie Infinity. So I was a pretty big proponent of that. I had a bunch of scholars. There's a scholarship program where you have people kind of like in third world countries, and you let them play the game, and then you split the earnings with them. So I actually streamed on Twitch and got scholars that way. And then that really got me into like, wow, you can make money doing something I love. And then that really got me into the whole, and that's kind of what made me become an adopter in Web3. And anything for you, Luciana?
Well, I'm originally from Argentina. As you may heard, it's not the most financial stable country in the world. So at the moment, we have like between 10 and 15 types of dollars: dollar blue, dollar tourist, dollar official, Qatar dollar for the World Cup, of course. So being born and raised in that ecosystem and being able to have some kind of stability or currency in which we could rely on was huge for me when I was living there 10 years ago. And I could see firsthand the democratization that blockchain in general, Bitcoin in particular at that moment, could bring to places like Latin America. So for me, it was obvious that there was something there, right? So after I sold the previous company, I jumped into this directly. I knew that there was some value here that needed to be unlocked.
Nice. And then what kind of, what chains did you, or tokens did you start like getting into when you were earlier in your adventures in Web3?
Well, I'm quite new to the space, to be honest. Like I started in the space when I started the company. I knew nothing about Web3 more than like handling Bitcoin. So, but in the last year, I definitely took a very deep dive into the space. And of course, there's like the most stable coins or the more renowned blockchains like Polygon, CK-Sync, but I'm much more focused on like the technical details and not on the gambling or trading. So that's my approach to that.
Awesome. It's interesting. I always tell people when I first started, my first venture was Dogecoin prior to working at Flipside. And I was like, yeah, let me try that. I made 4x my money. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And that was like my first venture, but that's not normal, right? I would say. But yeah, definitely it just takes something that's, maybe pop culture or something like that that'll get you into the system for sure.
Well, there's another factor. Like I studied with some of the co-founders of Decentraland, Open Zeppelin. Like Argentina is a huge technical hub. So when we were coding back then in high school, I'm a software engineer as well. I definitely had a lot of those. So probably that was my first approach. I remember the founder of Decentraland, the first POC, he showed me his phone and it was ugly. And he was like, no, but can you see this is the future? And I was like, this looks like I don't know, Tetris maybe. Like, so that was a very close approach to the space as well a couple of years ago.
Awesome. Thanks, Luciana. And Scott, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a developer for more than a decade. I really care about all kinds of developer. I work at Salesforce for many years. I work at Uber for many years. I found out even though like very polished software in Salesforce and Uber, you probably only have like maybe 2 or 3 engineers looking at particular code. But that's not true for Ethereum, like Bitcoin. You basically have hundreds of thousands of developers from different perspective, looking at the code, trying to improve code. So from certain perspective, I think Ethereum is one of the most is one of the most well-oiled and well-polished software in the world. Additionally, when I look about Ethereum, I feel like it's a future. The reason is that I spent my whole career in distributed system. I feel like Ethereum is just a distributed system with a Byzantine failure tolerant, like Byzantine failure tolerant distributed system. So you can have a lots of crazy innovation on top of it. Like think about this, we have DeFi since 2020, right? NFT since 2018, but really pop up since 2021. And then we have a lot of innovation can build on top of NFT as well. Like currently people use NFT just to show the ownership as an image, but I feel like there is a lot of potential here because NFT is just an object, but NFT is an object. You basically can use NFT to do a lot of things, like use NFT as passport, you soul bound your NFT. And then I have this crazy idea with my friends last night and we were drinking some beer, say, hey, why don't we actually change this identification, social truth as NFT? Instead of like a Twitter handler or Facebook handler, just let Twitter adopt to this NFT as a social truth standard. In that case, you can build your NFT along with many other opportunities. Like say, you can build your NFT with a list of object as a message. You can build your NFT on a lot of things. Basically, this NFT is your avatar. And then you can integrate with all these Web2 platform. You basically have a decentralized ID, but it requires adoption from Web2 world. Like it requires a cooperation from Twitter, from Google for this type of thing. But it's actually, I feel like this is the future to actually truly decentralize identity, truly decentralizing. And this will be happen. From my perspective, this will happen just in one day. How long this thing will come is the only question, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Ethereum being the most stable, working with data and, a lot of the layer 1s and layer 2s as far as like consistency, things not going down. It's the most robust out there. The only problem is the gas fees, of course, but you have things like Polygon and a lot of these layer 2s and Avalanche that subside that. So you think, there was DeFi summer, there was NFT summer. Is there something new that you think that that you've chatted around with your friends or different colleagues of what you think would be next inside, for?
I have no idea. If I have an idea, I'm probably going to be the next trillionaire or billionaire.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I feel like this is one of the most active developer society, and the innovation will come from here. If the innovation come, it will come from here. And I feel like this is like next generation distributed system, which in this area I have spent more than 10 years, so that experience at this distributed system area. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Let's talk about what areas of Web 2 do you think are going to get disrupted with Web 3, right? Like one idea that I had was imagine, I think the biggest thing about blockchain and Web 3 is we need adoption from big corporations and a lot more people. I think that's what's going to make it succeed. Like an idea was like, imagine if you were a company and then you're putting out coupons, right, to people. And then you could say, there's a 10% coupon online, but if you do it on chain, you get a 20% coupon. So it allows people to get on, to do things on chain with Web3, and then now you have their behavior across any platform that they use on chain, right? And then you have also the balance of their wallet. How much money do they have? So now you can have these targeted segments of like, all right, we need to put these bigger coupons out to these whales to have them drive your product, right? So I think that could be a big thing as well, because like now you have essentially their email address and all their behavior. You have all their balances and all their activity. Like if you could have that today, let's just say you have a marketing team and say, what if I can give you the person's anything that they've ever done and their wallet as far as their balance? How powerful is that? How much money is that worth? And I think that's that's a ton of value, right? But you need companies to do that and put these ideas in their head and saying like, hey, have you ever thought about this? And hey, Nike or Starbucks, right? Like, how do you get more people to do things on chain? Because now you have a publicly distributed database that's immutable, that anyone can access at any time. So that was one idea that I had that we could hopefully have in the future. What about you, Luciana? What do you think?
So I will first tell you what I'm seeing with Sedalio and then another ideas. But with Sedalio, what we are seeing, like we are working very close with Web2 companies. We want to be that bridge between Web2 and Web3, and especially during this market, right? But I think that in order for the community to grow, in order for blockchain or cryptos in general to grow, we need to build those bridges. And me coming from the Web2 space, I think I have the skills to do that more than maybe being a super fully Web3 focused company. And something that we're seeing at the moment, which I find amazing, is a lot of companies complaining about, for example, certifications of all kinds of certifications, like from food being produced ethically to, I don't know, organic food to compliance. All those certifications at the moment, nobody believes in them. Like the guys who are giving you the certifications are the same ones that are benefiting. Usually those certifications are based on proofs that are average proofs of things that do not matter. Like I think certifications could be done much better with data that lives on chain, that can be traced, that can be tamper-proof, that you just show people that what you are pledging is true, and you can do that. So I think disrupting the whole certification systems that is super broken, is super expensive for companies. They are paying basically a business, I don't know, certification to do business that doesn't worth anything. So that's one of the spaces that we are seeing a lot of value in. And not just certifications, but also we are seeing a lot of traction in the environmental space, where many stakeholders need to battle the greenwashing thing that is going on. Like there's a lot of bad propaganda. Like I feel like in the blockchain space, we have a lot of fraud, but in the like green companies or in general, they are fighting greenwashing. There's a lot of greenwashing going on, but there's also a lot of companies doing things right? And they need to show that they're doing things rightly. And one way is to show data that can be verified, right? So those are some of the use cases in the real world that we are seeing in Sedalio. And another thing that I think is going to be huge is like tokenization of assets in general. Like companies are super reluctant, probably the most traditional companies are reluctant to use cryptocurrencies. They don't know the financial implications of that. They don't know how to account for that. But they can start doing some tests with tokenization of expensive assets like cars or medications. And there's some amazing things going on in those areas. For example, when you need to recall something, you know where the things are. Or if you want to make sure that, I don't know, a medication is not fraudulent and it has not been corrupted. So I think tokenization of real assets, plus then companies adopting cryptocurrencies, and then smart contracts to coordinate the assets and the payments. I think that's kind of how I see things evolving in the more traditional businesses.
Like a pink slip for your car would be on chain, right? So if you wanted to trade it, you only have one copy of it on chain for that particular NFT for the car.
Exactly. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, why wouldn't companies adopt that, right?
Right. Yeah. You only want it to exist once, and there's no counterfeits or anything like that. If you can trace it back to the real minting of it, that makes sense. Awesome. All right. And Scott, what about yourself?
Yeah. So I think maybe Zetterblock is one of the company closest to all the Web2 customers, because we're selling to enterprise. If you look at the biggest Currently, the biggest 30 Web3 enterprise, half of them are our trial customer, our paid customer. So that's why actually we are very close to Web2 world, but also close to Web3 enterprise world. I think there are two things I think potentially Web3 can adoption, like blockchain Web3 adoption. First is payment. I think Web3 can be the fundamental payment platform for every single platform. In that case, for example, for Facebook, next generation Facebook, Instagram, next generation Instagram, YouTube, next generation into YouTube. This is actually I talked with PayPal CTO Edwin last week. Actually, I invited him to our office. I think that's why we have this a lot of the discussion about payment, about Web3. I think the biggest obstacle here is not technology. Web3 technology the blockchain technology can definitely support payment. The biggest obstacle here is regulation. How do you actually persuade all these regulator say, hey, let's actually support this, Web3 like tokens as a basic fundamental payment infra for all the platform, how the new platform is actually the biggest obstacle. But I definitely think like this could potentially be one part on Web3 technology can disrupt it for Web2. Another thing, actually 100% agree with Luciana, is tokenization. Here, the tokenization could be several things. It could be tokenized your real estate. For example, if you buy a house, you want to actually sell a fraction of the house, rent a fraction of the house, like some things like that. But recently, just for last few months, there is very demanded product, just bonds, like treasury bonds, US treasury bonds. If you log into the direct treasury, US direct treasury, it's damn hard to buy a treasury bond here. But if they can, just have all these treasury bonds on chain, as a token, you can buy at fraction of the treasury. It's actually going to be a killer app. Like people has a very, very strong demand for this. This is actually told by one of the head of the blockchain technology in one of the biggest bank told me. Like people have strong demand for this. And since the tokenization is actually a very strong demand as well. No matter it's a tokenization or treasury bond, tokenization of the, how like stablecoin is actually tokenization of USD dollars, right? So it has strong demand for that as too.
Cool, awesome. Now that the frenzy of the bull is over, we've seen evidence of people who want to build smarter, right? Using data to make their decisions. We're seeing clients like with decentralized exchanges looking at like people's more sophisticated wallet information. They want to know if a wallet's private, if it's coming from a decentralized exchange. Is this data granularity new kind of in Web3? And do you have any clients or any partners that you work with that's looking more into like wallet balance information or some other data that might be useful for them to build smarter? Well, Luciana, what about you? Start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially working with Web2 companies, there's two things. The first one is they need to be compliant. And being compliant many times means having information, KYC, knowing your customer. Like, it's not just building better products with the tools that they're used to and with the analytics and data to be able to be competitive, let's say, but it's also about being compliant. Like, and that's not negotiable for most of those companies. But even more important probably is I understand the corporate world quite well. I was selling $20 million for corporations before, and there's a thing called ROI. Like they need to get the budgets approved. They have bosses. They need to have metrics. They need to know exactly what they're building and what's the impact on their businesses in order for their bosses to put money on that, right? So it's as simple as being able to get the right data, not just to build better and smarter and understand the users and with the kind of frameworks that builders are used to build, but it's also about being compliant and being able to show and create business models and show the ROIs to get the budget. So when I'm speaking with innovators within those corporations, they are like, this is a non-negotiable, right? Like, I need data. I'm used to that. I know how to cooperate with that. So if I'm blind, there's a bunch of things that I cannot do, and therefore I cannot build. So I think it's crucial.
Yeah, I agree. We have a customer that's like a tax company, an accounting company, and they're like, if you miss one transaction, we can't use your data at all. And it's really hard with Web3 data because it's like, who knows, the node could be down, it could be going down, it could be out of service for a bit. They could, I don't know, just random bugs and errors. So we have put a lot of testing in place in all our data. We have about 13,000 DBT tests that we run every day. If something's wrong, we need to be on top of it and making sure that we let the customers know and fix the problem. But in order for Web3 and data and the blockchain to be usable and people to respect it, you have to put a high quality and set a high bar, right? So yeah, definitely, I agree on that point. And what about you, Scott?
Yeah, so I think the most common full data patterns I look at full demanded data usage for data observer is first is account balance and portfolio history. Like you want Robinhood type of experience, even if it maybe holds at least a combination of NFT and tokens. You want Robinhood type of portfolio history experience, and then majority of company are not there yet, but like our customer like OpenZeppelin, they actually use on-chain data to do trainings. They basically say, hey, I want to figure out if this is a suspicious transaction, I can block it. So in that case, it's machine learning. In that case, it's basically you can do a lot of things. Every single transaction on Ethereum is transparent. So you can say, hey, you can figure out before you build app, you can figure out what other users look like. What's your most ideal user? How do you get most ideal user? And then you can before you build app, you can maybe just trying to get the user first maybe, and also you can do some recommendation system on top of it, right? Think about this: the whole TikTok and Amazon is built on top of recommendation system, but Web3 we're not there yet. It's you need first a solid data infra platform. Then you can have your own algorithm to recommend right content to right user. It's a win-win situation for you. And lastly is probably user want to understand about their competitions. Like for example, monitoring what's the transaction look like. I used to work with a Polygon head of data team. They're trying to build like App Store type of application. So basically say, hey, I want to make sure Polygon apps is like Apple App Store. So I know exactly what's the trending app, how people are using this, and how many unique users are using this. What's the rating for them, and how should I recommend the right app to the right user? This is our thing. But now we are at very fundamental, like a wild west in the Web3 in the data world. Like in that case, currently sometimes how do you get low latency data? If you add a filter, how do you actually get notified? How do you decode the data, right? And all the Web3 data start with 0x. How do you decode the data, right? Can you get data with zero latency? Like 100 millisecond latency. When this criteria, when this event or this criteria happen, notify my application, notify user. Can you do that? Currently, there is no way to help you. Well, Datablock is actually the only currently, as far as I know, Datablock is the only platform can help you to do that. So monitoring low latency data, and you can define your own criteria and notify a user when a certain event meets certain criteria happen. Yeah,
that's awesome. And then we'll transition to like the topic of, I guess, like machine learning, AI. Is there things that customers that you work with that are dealing with that? Like one example that we have a flip side is we have these, we call them scored apps. So we partner with certain foundations, and since we have all the data, we can find out user behavior. So if a company's like, we put scores on specific addresses and saying, hey, this is like a really good user for you because they buy a lot of NFTs, they keep them, they hold them, they pay back all their loans. They do everything in that sense, and then we give them a higher score. And then when they do an airdrop, they actually give more to the people with the higher scores. So it's kind of like a credit score, but we're using like kind of data science models in order to get that. Is there anything that you guys are working with, or specific partners or clients that you work with that are doing some sort of machine learning, advanced analytics, anything like that?
So we have this initiative on the other side, but with AI. We are thinking about how we can ensure people that are using AI, agents, ChatGPT, you name it, that the data that is feeding those models is verified or is trustable. So this whole thing about the data trail and maybe even being able to say, hey, I just want answers that are formed by, I don't know, just papers coming from top universities or something like that. If you want to use that data to actually write a new paper or to create a new medical device. So especially when speaking with people in the healthcare industry, we found that they are super afraid of that. Like, it doesn't matter if I had all this new information if I cannot use it, and I cannot use it if I cannot verify the origin, the sources, where this data is coming from, which is a very hard engineering problem to solve. It's not that easy, but we are definitely thinking about this and trying to find maybe a proof of concept or something to try and test it out. But we heard a lot of demand from that.
Yeah, one thing that we've chatted internally at Flipside is like, how do you battle bots and labeling bots, right? Because like the bots are the ones that are abusing the system programmatically. So it's like before you can even let them use your protocol, you use your your model to say, is this a bot or not? Look at the behavior of the wallet address and then label them accordingly or tag them. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, so I do observe like we have many companies using us for machine learning, but I do observe two trends very obviously. One is we just announced a partnership with Cube. Cube3 is our customer. So what they do is that they use historical data to figure out all this, deployed, basically just all this successful hack activity, like, in this case, historical data. They use machine learning to figure out the patterns around it, and then deploy the machine learning model, like in real time. When the data come real time, they can make a decision: should I block this transaction or not? So this is a one use case, like use batch data to do the training, use real time data to actually decide if we should block this transaction. It's like add a security to it. OpenZeppelin is another example. It's actually do a lot of the it's looking at a lot of the contract creation and trying to do machine learning on top of it. I couldn't disclose more details about OpenZeppelin part. Yeah, but another thing, and this is like a common pattern, like anti-fraud, just proactively preventing bad players happening. Another machine learning use case is that when our customer, similar to the channel analysis or TRM labs, they use us data to do the machine learning to get the labels, automatically lay the labels. Like actually, even I think they even have human in the loop building. So basically, just use machine learning to like first label the data, and for those data, this label with wallet address and label. For those label not very confident, they can just send to the operators, and then can operator label the data. So this is a two common machine learning use case. I haven't seen any recommendation system yet, but I think it will come in very soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then where do they write the labels? Is it written on chain or is it written like internally in their database?
Yeah, so it's currently different company. Some of company writing to us. They don't want to host their own centralized DBs writing that. But majority of companies still write to their own DB. I think this is a proprietary data, right? That's actually their mode, competing with other data provider or service provider.
All right, awesome. Well, I think that's it as far as topics. I think we're just going to open it up for Q&A for the crowd or group. If anyone has any questions for anyone on the panel, please raise your hand and I can call you out.
You guys had mentioned like putting real estate on chain. One of the most common anti-crypto comments would be, okay, so if someone gets their wallet hacked for the NFT for their house, so that they just get evicted, or like, how do we, for something that's in real life, how do you do that bridge between like real life and like ownership? Or if you guys heard of anything like that?
So I can tell you how we are dealing with that. Like our databases are owned by wallets. So it's kind of the same problem, right? Like we were like, well, but if I lose my keys or whatever, I lose all my data. Well, actually, like databases are owned by smart contracts and the smart contracts are owned by wallets. But we are using one startup and soon we will implement other auth providers. But there's this startup, Privy, for example. They are doing, they separate the key in three parts. One of them is stored by them. The other one is in your phone. The other one is stored by you. All of them are protected by pins. Then you have some solutions like social recovery solutions, which I think are super smart. Argent is doing that. So you can have this trusted circle of people of trust, and you can set your own rules. Let's say you want to say, if 3 of my 5 most favorite people in the world agree, then I will get my wallet back. So I think a mix between being custody and not fully custody, for this kind of assets, it makes sense.
Yeah, for me, I would say I would add things like two-factor authentication with on-chain transactions. So, I mean, it's annoying, yes, but that added level of security, is well worth it. Because like I know it's really hard to hack someone with two-factor, unless they hack your phone. If they go into all that effort, then maybe they deserve to steal your house. But I wouldn't say that. But I think that having more like a more mature, adding a maturity level to Web3, I think is going to help out in the long run. In the long run, for sure.
Yeah, for me, I feel like we're not there yet. We probably need some protocol level to support. means that protocol level means that we have some, someone need to define a protocol, say, hey, all the things should, how do you, the only way, the source of truth, the only way to verify if you own this product is actually, is a belong, like ownership on NFT or ownership on address. Then you can have some application link with this smart blockchain. Then in this case, think about this, this like nowadays you have a lot of remote control, like remote control car, remote control doors, remote control robot, right? And then as long as you have a protocol, say, hey, the ownership of remote control can only be identified on chain, on this NFT or on this address, then you can basically have impact to the real world. But I don't think we are anywhere near here. We probably need a protocol first. Like protocol say, hey, you need to define the source of truth. Ownership is on chain instead of like maybe on by a Google account, something like that.
Right.
Oh, yes. So quick question on that. You mentioned about like using 2FA, and like how do you use 2FA with wallets?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just literally just thought about that like 20 seconds ago when it is an idea that popped in my mind. But I would say, like my phone, right? Your phone's very secure. Like usually you're the only one touching your phone. And when you have that 2FA, it sends you a code and it says, please put in the code. Like let's say you do a transaction, you hit run transaction, then it would send you a text with like a 6-digit code. And then you have to type in the 6-digit code and then hit enter in any application. And then it will only run the transaction if it matches the number on your phone. Right. So you would have to figure out how to, probably has to do with SMS, which I think you can do pretty easily nowadays with any kind of programming language. And that's how I would implement it, but I don't know if that's too much like friction to the user or not.
I see. Okay, yeah, just a little bit confused on like
Yeah.
how, because this once you lose your private key, then none of the 2FA is not going to work against that, prevent that theft. That's why I was just wondering, like,
Yeah.
if there's like any maybe protocol for 2FA on blockchain
Yeah.
that supports that specific preventer. Maybe that could be a really
Yeah.
cool
Instead
idea.
of private keys or whatever, it could just be all 2FA related things tied to your cell phone.
There's a very interesting startup, Lit Protocol. I don't know if you heard about that one, but they're working on how to programmatically add more layers of complexity to your keys and encryption as well. But I think those are guys that are doing some good work there.
Yeah, I used to work for a company called MyTech Systems. They do identity verification, so KYC, right? So biometrics, fingerprint scanning, facial recognition. I mean, that's a whole nother level. We're not there yet. Like we're barely even getting transactions to run correctly on chain. But maybe in like 10 years, right, we could have that the way you have a face scanner. All our phones have it. Like Apple has it. It can. I mean, it's pretty close. It's not perfect. Technology is going to get better over time, but you can only do transactions with just using your face, right, or your fingerprint or something like that. So just getting away from traditional like writing 16 keywords into a piece of paper and putting that in your safe or whatever's happening nowadays. I think that maybe in the long run we could do something more technological and more advanced to be able to handle this.
So I think one thing that's really interesting is if you look at like OpenSea versus Blur, for example, right? One of the innovations that Blur did was they made it really easy to see these trades happening kind of in real time, right? And I think, that's a pretty cool phenomenon to see versus just originally OpenSea was more of like a Craigslist style offering. So I'm just wondering, like, how are you all thinking about this kind of like real-time data aspect, right? And also if you are thinking about it, like, how do you make sure that your data is real time? Like, how do you kind of go about it?
Yeah, so I think real-time data on blockchain that depends on it's confirm or not confirm. If Solana, you need 20 seconds to confirm, do you consider data after 10 seconds real time? For Ethereum, every 15 seconds you have data, and then we generally can get data 100 milliseconds. But with this real time, are you sure you can take action on top of this data? Because the data can be completely reorg later. Maybe 2 minutes later, it completely got reorg. So I think the part here is that there is no single. What we can do is that we have this real-time streaming API. So you can use webhook, WebSocket, or use use one of the ways, like a consumer, like Kafka consumer to consume the data. But you also need to listen to another API for all this reorg information. If the data is actually reorg, you need to crack the data. Otherwise, you're going to have this real-time reorged data in your database forever. And data will outlive code for sure, right? Even if like several years later, you still have this wrong data in your database, mess up all the transaction and balance history. So yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
I can jump in here too. So there's a problem too, right? You could have uncle blocks. Basically, the transaction hasn't been validated by everybody. So you could hit a node and be like, hey, this transaction happened. It happened at this block. Here's a transaction ID. But it didn't get validated by all the things. And it's actually an uncle block now. So that's a problem you run into. So you have to kind of step back. Like, do you want real time like milliseconds? Do you want real time like 10 seconds? You got to know kind of that threshold. One thing that we built at Flipside, we have this thing called Live Query. It's this application that we actually released maybe a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that allows you to query the nodes directly all through SQL. So we could hit like an endpoint, Quick Node's one of our partners, all that node, a bunch of different node providers are partners with us. And you can do it all through SQL. So you're actually not having to ingest it. You're just hitting it. You're hitting the node directly when you need to. So you're not having to source through every single transaction, all the history, because that's what happens on a database. Is like for Solana, you have like 200 billion rows. But if you only need data from the last 2 minutes, and then you can say, give me the last 10 blocks, and then sift through that. But again, that's also not milliseconds, right? So there's a kind of a problem there. But I would say hitting the node directly is our solution.
Yeah, the only thing that I will add up is I think this is not a complete solved issue, but I've seen many high frequency transaction platforms having a mesh database for real-time transactions, and they just record on the blockchain beneath if you need that like super real-time data. Our approach as Sedalius architecture, since our database is centralized, and then we record just a log of the modifications and the difference, and whoever access, actually you get real-time data as you would with any database. And that was one of the reasons why we took this approach, which is less decentralized, but more performant, let's say. But we are storing structures of data and files, like not just transactions. It's a completely different world, probably.
And it can also be very complicated, right? If you want some very advanced thing that you're tying price data from CoinMarketCap, data, from on-chain to do this, and then you need to do reads on some data to get some sort of attribute for a particular contract. Like you have to get those all to combine at once and make sure they're all the data is there. So that's also another added complexity as well. And then do you think about high throughput, low latency, right? Like if you have an application where all the data is coming, let's just say you have a MetaMask wallet and then you need that to update real time. Like they could have 100,000, or let's just say tens of thousands of people that are doing the same thing. Can your database handle that? And like I always say, you let the person building the app worry about the caching, and then have my company worry about giving the data and giving access to that data. Because a lot of people, they try to do too many things at once with the same tool, and that's probably not the best way to build things. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Hey, James, I like your example about that tax consulting companies. So I'm just curious how you guys tackled that question about the issue with that zero data loss at the end.
Oh,
How
for
did
sure,
you-
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure Luciana and Scott, you guys also
Yeah.
have some similar requests for the customer as well.
Yeah, so I'll start. So we call it data observability, right? Again, if you're missing one transaction out of billions of transactions, and it's a $1 million transaction, like that's very costly. A tax person can't use your data. So we run a lot of tests. We run about 13,500 tests on our 20 blockchains that we cover. And also, we have a public dashboard that shows like how many blocks are we missing, how many transactions are we missing. We're trying to have like an uptime like a traditional software company would have. Like I need 3 nines of uptime, meaning I can only be down for 6 hours of perfect data completeness, which is, I don't even know if it's like a real thing in the data space. It's not like a web application, right? Like AWS could go down, our node provider could go down. Like, does that mean we're not hitting SLA? So I think for us, just being very proactive in this and thinking about how do we do this, and always testing as much as we can, doing block gap tests, doing transaction gaps tests, and make sure we have everything covered. And then as soon as we get alerted, we jump on top of it and fix that or alert our providers. So it's about being proactive and running a lot of tests for us.
Yeah, so actually at Uber, I'm in charge of the whole Uber data quality stuff. Uber has billions of support tickets. If you report say, hey, my driver is rude, you have that one support ticket. Uber has billions of them. How do we apply the all the data quality knowledge at the Uber? In my company ZetaBlock is that first thing like we do the exactly same thing as Flipside do. Like check a lot of rule can be very straightforward. If you have block 1, you're gonna have block 2 next, right? For transaction, you can verify the transaction. You're gonna have transaction total transaction number should equal to the number of transaction in the block. But we also do something very interesting. Learn from my experience in the past. We do this P95 verification. It means that if we random sample 400 samples from a large pool, and we can use the accuracy as a accuracy for this large pool, no matter how big the pool is. Like could be billions of records. This is a P95 confidence level to verify data. We do a lot of things like this. We also did is actually cross-check with different data vendors as well. So we cross-check with Flipside, we cross-check with data with Dune to make sure the data is repaired. And also, because what we provide not only raw data, we also provide decoded data. Currently, I think our Ethereum decode rate is 96 or 97 decode rate. It means that every single log transaction, we actually underlying what's the event, what's the argument, we can decode the data. So in that part, we need to have the statistic on that as well. So basically, for every single column, we have a statistic. What's the percentage of null values? What's the percentage of the distribution? And we do that as well. And again, we have almost like 1,000 tables. And we need to do this for every single 1,000 table. So we actually build this auto recover pipeline as well. So all this check can be automatically checked and automatically recovered. So that's what we do for our pipeline in ZetaBlock.
Yeah, and the kind of use cases that we are after are not high frequency and are not DeFi, so we do not have that problem, honestly. So I cannot answer you. So we rely on DynamoDB as the main database, so it's the same as a traditional system. And also the kind of use cases that are after our tech are usually low frequency, but very valuable data that needs to be stored. But sometimes it's once per week, or sometimes it's once per day. But this definitely, we do not sell for high frequency use cases. We are not the best solution for that.
It's usually like build versus buy. Like you can pay for Monte Carlo. Like I don't know if you guys know about them, but they're a vendor that allows you. They do the test for you, right? So you can, if you don't want to invest time for your team to be building these tests and models and maintaining that, you could just pay for a third-party vendor to look at data quality, observability for you as well.
Yeah, I think data quality part is actually, it's a cookie cutting problem. There is no cookie cutting solution because it depends on a lot of things. If your Spark pipeline is delayed, you have data quality issue. If your pipeline is broken, you have data quality issue. If your Kubernetes couldn't allocate enough worker to process the data, to decode data, you have data quality issue. So I think that part you have preemptive, just make sure the resource is orchestrated correctly, and you need to build a bunch of observation to make sure if you have data quality issue, repeat the process. You mean the whole process need to be redundant, so you can just repeat the process and fix the issue.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I think we're done. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Thank you, Luciana. Thanks for Scott.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys coming on.